Hi, friend.
Hi, friend.
And to the brave hearts listening out there, welcome to Permission to be Human. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Janelle.
Get ready for some real-time relationship woo and wisdom
from the front lines with occasional tantrums and tears
about how breaking rules, blurring boundaries, and tossing tradition can be catalysts for finding your truth.
Let's debunk the fairy tales we were told as children and create a new map for life.
Yes, Disney can go fuck itself.
If you're seeking permission to choose your own path,
freedom is the new F word, people,
and want to feel less alone along the way,
we got you. Do you need permission to be human? You got it.
Listen, subscribe, and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Learn more about us at permissiontobehuman.live.
Please note, this is our side of the story. Our partners and metamors have their own individual experiences, and we do not speak for them.
Hi, friends. So great to see you.
Hi, friend. Your cleavage looks really good today.
Thank you. I've got a bra on for the first time in a while.
Totally. You never wear a bra now. Like, and neither do I. By the way, you told me when I went to Costa Rica, you're like, I don't really, I told you this, right? Like you told me, I was like, hey, I need those little pieces of tape to put under my boobs. Where can I get those? And you like told me where to get them. And so I brought them to Costa Rica. But you're like, Andrea, I really don't think that you're going to be wearing a bra much when you're in Costa Rica. And I was like, okay, whatever.
Let alone sticky tapes in a hot, humid environment.
Yeah. And I did not wear a bra like the entire time I was there. So, and now I very rarely wear a bra. And when I do, I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. Why would I want to do this?
So I'm curious, what would your mom say about that?
She always wore a bra, but she is also okay being braless. Yeah. So speaking of her mother's advice.
Here we are. We're talking about questioning everything, especially your mom's advice. And I know, Andrea, you are so visual. I can't wait for this episode because you're going to have lots of things to share. So what we're going to be talking about is like, first, our mom's advice. What were we taught as a child to question? And then what taught us to question what we had been taught? And then what we questioned lately?
And where will that lead us?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why question it? You know, what's the result?
Yes. So let's just get started with you. Tell me, what's some of the advice that your mom gave you when you were younger?
Right. So my mom definitely, there were all these like little random things that she would say, like, when you're sitting at a restaurant, like wrap your purse. When you put your purse on the floor, like wrap your purse around your leg. Like, just like, okay, so no one steals it, right? I'm like, okay, good idea, right? Like logged in my head. And then she's like, don't park when you're parking outside in a parking lot. Don't park near a van because like, you know, someone's going to scoop you up and put you in the back of that van and kidnap you, right? So I feel like I grew up thinking like I was like a potential kidnap victim all the time. I mean, mainly because on the news, all you see are white girls on the honor roll that get kidnapped, right? Because that's how the news was. Anyway, so like, I think she also really taught me, you know, happiness is something you make yourself. People will always remember how you made them feel. And the most important one, flush with your foot. Because according to her, everyone has touched themselves and then touched the flush. And so why would we want to put our fingers on the flush? So that was like a good sanitary one, right?
Oh gosh, and I have like total opposite. Like I just like sit right on the toilet. But I was told to put toilet paper on the toilet.
I was too, but I totally just sit on the toilet too. I'm not hovering above the cover. Like I do other things to like tone my muscles. I don't need to do that. But anyway, so yeah, so that was some of my mom's advice, and some of it I questioned, and some of it. So actually, none of it I questioned as a child. I was really a big rule follower then. But as I got older, I started to question it. Janelle, what did your mom tell you that you remember?
I would say never get on a motorcycle.
Oh, for sure.
And be kind.
But did you get on a motorcycle?
Oh my gosh, I have. In fact, I now have my motorcycle license.
Oh, that's right.
I got that during COVID.
You're like,
and
sorry,
I remember
Mom.
my dad, who often like something will happen and my dad will be like, oh, I'm so glad. Like, I wish like your mom was here to see that. And then on that one, he was like, I'm glad your mom's not here to see that.
Right. Okay. What else?
So be kind. Don't eat sugar cereal for breakfast. And don't write anything down you don't want someone to read.
Ooh.
So do you remember those like origami folded notes during like junior high.
Yeah. She's like, don't do that. Yeah. And I remember thinking maybe my 20s that I should have a contingency plan. Like I remember telling one of my best friends then, like, if I die, you have to get the journal from under my mattress and burn it. Mm-hmm. Right. Like really important. Mm-hmm. Like, don't let anyone read this. I remember thinking that I would have to hide shit in the dumpster. Mostly, I think it was, porn stories that I'd looked up online that I was like self-pleasuring to. And I felt so guilty about it.
And you were writing them down?
No, but I'd printed them, right? Oh. I would printed them to read, right? Which was like, yeah, at the time it was like so bad. I felt a lot of shame around it. Porn is okay in the right context. Yes. Anyway.
Yeah, porn is okay. But what were you taught as a child to question?
Yeah, good question. Overall, I feel like I wasn't really taught to question. I was taught to question anything except for what my mom said.
Oh.
I feel like she was really like, here's the way we're doing it. Here's the way I'm raising you. And she was very confident. And she's like, I've thought a lot about this, and this is how we're doing it. And I really appreciated how much intention she put into things. But at the same time, I don't think I was really taught to critical think until much later. Mm-hmm. And so I was also just an accepting child. I wasn't rebellious. You know, I memorized the movies that I watched. I memorized the mass. I did everything that I was supposed to do in the mass. And I was like, I was following the rules.
Oh, in the Catholic mass?
In the Catholic mass, exactly. Mm-hmm. And that was the way it was supposed to be, right? Just like Billy Joel's, only the good die young. It's like, I got a nice white dress and a party on my confirmation, right? I had a stained glass curtain I was hiding behind. Everything was going to go just according to plan. My mom just knew it, right? If we just did this exactly right, then everything would work out perfectly. Mm. And so I think there was a lot of pressure to do what she said and follow this route.
Right.
This prescribed route.
Mm-hmm. And I heard you say with like perfection in that, right? That there was so do you feel like you were striving to meet your mom's expectation in that?
For sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is normal.
Oh yeah.
And, also setting my own expectation as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you?
I feel like I was taught to critically think. And even when it was uncomfortable for my parents, I remember when one of my friends got pregnant and decided to get an abortion. And I was the person she told, and I was her confidant, and I was 15. Mm. And wow. I had just gotten my permit. And I asked my parents to like borrow the car, and without saying, I can't tell you why, I just need it. And they trusted me enough to say, okay. And we then had a whole conversation. And then I got home later on, told them what was going on. And the conversation was so impactful because they said, that we don't support that. Like, we are Catholic, we would believe in the right to life, but we believe in you more. And we would want you to be able to come to us for anything. What I learned from them in that moment was that they were encouraging me to critically think what was true for me, no matter what I had been taught by them. And so I remember having more and more conversations with my dad where I was pushing back on the dogmatic beliefs of the Catholic Church that I really struggled with. And he would debate me on them. And we would go back and forth. And even though it was something he really, really, really stood for, he allowed me to question it.
Sounds like healthy questioning, right? And healthy debate.
Yeah. Even though it was also really a struggle. I mean, these were not easy conversations. And they were ones that still put a divide in some ways between my dad and I to some degree. Right. But I felt supported and invited to still have my views. What taught you to question? So you said you didn't really question much growing up. So what taught you to question as an adult?
Yeah. So I feel like when I read a couple books that really impacted my life. One was was called Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time, that this woman, Barb Keeble, gave me. I used to like smoke Marlboro Lights on her back patio. She was like 40 or something. And I felt like, and I was probably 22. And she was like, we were talking about business, and she gave me this book meeting Jesus again for the first time. And when I read it, I thought, what? I'm like, Jesus was this like good guy who supports females and lepers and like was kind and everything. I was like, he's supposed to be the son of God. And like, I can't take birth control and women are oppressed. And like, I was just blown away.
No sex before marriage.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so, and growing up, I wasn't strict Catholic, but I was definitely Catholic, was confirmed, went to CCD. My parents were not that strict. We didn't go every Sunday, but it really blew me away. And I was like, oh, I need to question this, right? It turns out Jesus was this totally different guy than I thought. Mm-hmm. So that was one. And then the second one was reading Natalie Goldberg's Long Quiet Highway. And this is the book about Buddhism and the journey, of a Jewish woman who comes from New York and goes out to Taos and, discovers meditation. And she really made me think about the mundanity of stuff, right? So she's talking about the conversations that would occur at her dinner table. And they were mainly about like, oh, I found that blue sweater I was looking for. Mm-hmm. And this became like a mantra for me, like this quote, because I also would be like, oh yeah, I must have the pink fringed shirt at Banana Republic, right? And I get really excited about that. And then I would go and buy that shirt and then I'd love it for 3 weeks and then I'd get bored with it and I'd want something else, right? But the idea of questioning materialism or questioning wanting stuff was very new to me because I was brought up in a culture that valued, cool clothes and spending money. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course, at all. But I feel like it really, for the first time, taught me to question the idea of buying stuff.
Mm-hmm. And why you were buying it.
I think overall, the Long Quiet Highway taught me to question the culture I was brought up into, American culture, what most commercials and advertisements and media tells me. And so that was really important.
Mm-hmm. And how old were you when you read that?
26.
Okay.
So I really didn't start questioning, I would say, until it was like the end of college. Mm-hmm. I was still kind of holding my parents up on this pedestal. Mm-hmm. I think more than most people do, to be honest. And then eventually started questioning everything at that point. What about you? What, like anything that you questioned in those college, early 20-something years? Or what taught you to question?
Yes, I'm from Long Island. So I came out to Colorado, my first time going out west, to be a camp counselor. And my roommate, who became my best friend for the next 20 years, was sleeping. She had brought her own duvet and was sleeping in a dorm room under a duvet naked. And I was like, wait, what is that? And so I did the same thing and felt freedom for the first time in my entire life sleeping, because prior to that, every Christmas I would get the long sleeve, long gown, flannel nightgown, high collar. Every Christmas that was like my new gift. And then I would sleep with that underneath 3 handmade quilts. And the weight was like, either I couldn't move, or if I did move, I would be tangled up in this thing. And so it was such a visceral feeling of freedom that came from being exposed to a new way of thinking. Naked under duvet cover felt so true to my system and to my body that I think was the first, like, oh, what else? Like, pay attention to what my body's telling me feels so free.
Huge, right? And sleeping naked is like so the bomb. Like, I hate clothing when I'm sleeping, unless I'm, at a cabin in Norway or something.
A whole bunch of adults and people I don't know.
Right. And so, funny story about that is that I went to the Planned Parenthood protest march, like, God, when was that? 2007, maybe? Or no, like 2002. And I, at the last minute, had been volunteering with Planned Parenthood, decided to go to DC, was going to room with a person I didn't know that Planned Parenthood was placing me with. And I got there at 11 o'clock, and it was Denise Dambrakis, who has been my friend ever since.
I know Denise.
Oh, that's right, you did too. And she and I got there and we're like, hi. I've seen you in Wash Park running, but I don't know you. And then I'm like, hi, I like to sleep naked. What do you think of that? She's like, oh, so do I. She's like, we should both sleep naked. Okay, I don't really know you, but good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was just like, and I tell people that story and they're just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like you were strangers and you slept naked. And I'm like, meh. So I'm with you. Okay. So.
All right, here we are. We're now in our late 40s.
Yes.
What have you questioned lately?
Oh gosh, we've questioned a lot lately, haven't we? So when I was 30, I probably questioned, the 5-year plan. Is that really how you have to do things? Right. I think I was taught financially and like life planning wise that I was on an escalator and I must know where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
And when we decided to go to the Peace Corps, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen in the Peace Corps. So, fuck the 5-year plan. Like we're doing this now. Right. So I think that was like the first time I was like, okay. And the Peace Corps was for hippies, clearly for like Alex P. Keaton's parents on Family Ties, like not something that my parents ever encouraged. So
you were you going on the Peace Corps was not part of the plan.
OMG. Like I was like, oh my God, what are my parents going to say?
Oh,
like it didn't matter, but I was like, this is so not like I was definitely raised as like bootstrapping capitalist, make money.
Entrepreneur.
Yes. Entrepreneur for sure. And which served me very well. So that was a big question. And then second big one was, should I have a baby in a hospital or not? Which I saw the business of being born with Ricky Lake. I was like, oh, wow, maybe I shouldn't have a baby in a hospital. Maybe I should have it at my house or a birthing center. There's a lot of chemicals that go into what they put into the baby. Wouldn't want to have an epidural. So questioned that and had my daughter in a birthing center. And that was big also. It was like my in-laws, my friends, my mom was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So.
Because that was 13 years ago.
Yes, 13 years ago.
Seems more common now maybe, but back then, yeah.
Then we decided to send our daughter to the Waldorf school where you don't learn to read until you're in 3rd grade and they don't have grades and they don't have textbooks and there's no computers. And I mean,
I didn't know that there's no computers at Waldorf.
Oh no, not a single one. So not in high school, they do a little bit more, but my daughter would not know how to type if it wasn't for COVID. So she was introduced to laptops so awkwardly. And we're like, oh my gosh, she's getting on a screen. You're joking. Like at the time when all that happened, it was so
I love learning new things. I had no idea this was part of the Waldorf way of being.
So, and you also had the same teacher for all 6 years. So very non-traditional school. My mother-in-law, she begged my husband to, she said she would pay for Scarlett to go to Catholic school. We were not doing that either. So that was another time I questioned. Then finally I questioned the structure of my marriage. And then we had decided at some point 7 years ago to become polyamorous. And that was definitely very non-traditional. And it's been a very awakening and inspiring and difficult journey, but it really has served us well. And I'd say in the same way, I always talk about motherhood, like the day that I realized I could do it my own way and that I didn't have to work all the time or stay home all the time. The day I realized I could do it my own way was my day of liberation.
Can you speak more to that day?
So it was about 6 months after my daughter had been born and my husband had been laid off. The furnace broke. We were like, I felt like we were like poor hippies. Like, that one like Loggins and Messina song about like, even though, we ain't got money, I'm still in love with you, honey. Yeah. I was like, oh, we're going to tell my daughter about this time and play this song for her because I felt like we were embodying it. So I was really stressed. I wasn't sleeping. My baby wasn't sleeping. My husband was stressed also. He would work all day at this job that he hated. So one day we were passing each other in the kitchen and we both said to each other almost in unison, like, it's going to be okay. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, the baby. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, the money. And that's when we knew like, oh, we need to switch roles for a while. So he stayed home and I went back to work.
Oh, wow.
It was a really big moment for us of knowing like we could do it whatever way we needed to do it for our personalities, for the harmony of our family. So lots of questioning and lots of good results with that.
Beautiful.
So Janelle, what have you questioned lately?
I would say that my awakening really started when my boyfriend at the time, I had said I wanted to get married, and he asked me why. Why do you want to get married? I'm still so appreciative for the question because he really showed me. I think although I had questioned some of my parents' stuff, I think that was my first time really questioning the cultural norms. And there was a distinction there. And I think it was my first time, and I'm not saying that I was aware of it even when he asked the question, but this understanding of, questioning everything. Where are we getting our messages that are almost invisible, like this invisible social conditioning that's happening?
Yes.
And so that, required a lot of reflection on my part. And I was able to come back around and say why I wanted to get married. But just the question is what helped me start to see the veil that I had been living.
Fascinating.
And then since then, I would say it's been a snowballing catalyst of questioning everything. Once someone sees the cultural conditioning, then I have been able to say, okay, well, is this true for me? And
beautiful.
Much like you said, deciding to be poly was the biggest catalyst for stripping away what I thought was true. And I've spoken to this before on Love and Marriage, which was, I thought that when we got married, that meant he was going to love me forever and I was going to love him forever. And then I realized that isn't true. No one can promise that because no one knows their future self. And I can make a commitment to love you every day. And I think that if I do that, I will ultimately love you forever. But that is the assumption that I will it literally broke my heart open in pain to realize that, what I thought was a truth, capital T, was not.
Truth, capital T. Love that. Yeah, that's really important. So, and I believe that led you to other questions that, you shared with me,
Yes. So
just share a few of those questions.
Yes. Does a marriage have to include intimacy? Do I need to live with my husband? Do I need to share a bed every night? And, one of for anyone who follows human design, they recommend that people sleep apart at night, regardless of what your type is, because you're exchanging energy at night. That concept, when I first heard of it, was so painful. I was like, oh my God, I would never want to do that. And because I love sleeping next to my partner. And then since then, and I know you've learned this too, that actually sleeping apart some of the time is really nourishing. I just come back to myself.
Yes, me too. And I've experienced that too. And it's been amazing. And I never would have thought it was okay. I was taught by so many voices, don't go to bed mad, and never sleep on the couch. Always come back together. And I know more people now, especially in a second marriage, who get married and have 2 bedrooms, and sometimes they sleep together and sometimes they don't. But it was a very radical concept when you first told me about it.
Right. Yes. And in the fact that, you can do that and it doesn't mean you're loving any less. No, you're not. It doesn't have anything to do with how your marriage looks or your love looks. It's more about what's true for myself.
Absolutely. And when I first did this, I was worried about what my daughter would think, right? Because I'm like, are they in a fight? Did they get mad? They're sleeping apart. And we even used COVID as an excuse in the beginning because we thought, okay, we need some space from each other. We're spending so much time in the house. And that felt like a good cushion in the beginning. We didn't ever say that out loud, but we were together a lot, right? And so we had some separation at night occasionally. We don't even do it that often now, but it really was difficult at first and strange, very disorienting, and then beautiful and nourishing and helpful.
And I think that's the piece that I want to actually hit upon right here is in the questioning everything is ultimately what feels right for me in my body. And it doesn't mean that everything my mom told me was wrong. It's just that I had to consciously think,
yes,
is it right for me? And the answer could still be yes or no. Much like with monogamy versus poly, I say I'm not an advocate for poly. I'm just an advocate for questioning monogamy so that you're doing it out of choice versus doing it from blind following.
Exactly. Beautiful. I love how you said that. So what is the conclusion here? It's like, why question anything? Well, clearly we have found some beautiful results by questioning and seeing if things are right for us. So as you can see, questioning everything, especially your mother's advice, can mean questioning your marriage, questioning your parenthood, questioning where you live, questioning how you sleep, what you eat. It impacts so many different aspects of your life.
Whether you match your shoes to your belt.
And when you question things, you lead to possibilities you didn't know existed.
Mm-hmm. So the brave heart homework for this week is we invite you to actually get quiet and listen to your body and ask yourself, is there something that you've been doing on autopilot, that you've just doing it because you should, doing it because you've been told to, and doesn't actually feel good? When you really get quiet, that it doesn't feel like the truest version of you. And that's it. You don't have to change it. We're just inviting you to question it.
Thank you for listening, Brave Hearts. We love you. See you next time.
See you next time. Please take the time on whatever platform you're listening to rate and review or rant, whichever you prefer. And we look forward to seeing you next time.